All right, very good morning to you. Today is Wednesday, April 6, 2022. I'm Andy Johnson. We're going to get to it in a moment. This is how we will begin today's edition of the program, AM Prime here. Let's tell you what's happening in the next hour and a half. We'll be talking in the second hour with Mr. Alwyn Beddoe. He refers to himself as a plebeian, and he likes to say that he speaks from the position of the rum shop. In the same way that people talk about having the grassroots view, that's his take on it. We're talking with him about, he's somebody who's always been, well, from the time that I've known him decades ago, somebody who's promoting the value of local government and the absence, in his view, of it in Trinidad and Tobago, despite all the amendments to and the improvements to legislation regarding local government. So we're talking with him about that. He says, what is before us now, again, does not match up to what is required for local government in Trinidad and Tobago. We take you around the region. We stop in Barbados this morning. If time permits, we go more than that. And then we return with a discussion with Ms. Rebecca Ali Govaya on the question of home violence, what has happened. So we show you the numbers, we tell you what's on the front pages of the Newsday Trinidad and Tobago and the Newsday Tobago as well. Well, we're trying to hook up now with Roberta Clark. She's the president of the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We're talking here with the continuation of the domestic violence in Trinidad and Tobago. The last two cases in which there were, both of them were the suicides, if you call it that. In one case, a father and a mother decided to take their lives because they said that they were going under pressure of one kind or another. And in the latest incident, a man killed his wife after she decided to leave him because he had confessed to her that he'd had an outside relationship from which she bore a child. And he tried to plead with her not to do that. And we know the story about that. Let's see if we have Roberta Clark with us. Good morning. Good to see you.
Hello. We're having some difficulties.
Well, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
And I can see you.
Okay.
All right. So how are you?
I'm well as circumstances allow. Thank you for asking.
Yes. Well, I want to get let's get to the issues and the continue. My first question to you is that to what extent you and your organization, people who work in this area, but trying to bring under control and then eliminate, if that is possible, the incidents of violence that we've seen in domestic violence among couples, home violence with families in the country. To what extent you get a sense that there's any room for comfort, there's any room for celebration, if that is a term that we could use at all, or that things aren't becoming any better, any more manageable?
Yeah, that's a really hard question, Andy, because I tend to be somebody who wants hopeful and optimistic, but also I think that we can say that there's been quite a bit of progress in a few areas. So one, certainly in the ending the silence around violence. Maybe 30 years ago, no one ever spoke about it. So many women suffered in silence. There was so much child abuse going on in silence, not just here, everywhere in the world. So the first sort of, I suppose, breakthrough was ending that silence, women speaking to their experiences and their realities, and demanding services. The second kind of breakthrough is establishment of shelters and hotlines, primarily by non-governmental organizations, just like in 4 or 5. I think the first shelter in this country was established by the Business and Professional Women in the South, with Radical Faith, and the second one, reported by Diana Mahavi, and the shelter. So that's a kind of a second progress. Then we see the law reform, thinking about the phases, okay?
Yes.
Then we see the law reform, the enactment of specific legislation to give kind of rapid access to the courts for protection orders. And now and then we've had 2 or 3 iterations of the Domestic Violence Act improvements responding to the shortcomings. What we see now is actually, I think, a whole of society awareness of how difficult this issue is and how prevalent it is. We have studies. So we have a good understanding of the prevalence of the incident and also the causes and the consequences of domestic violence. But what we are not seeing is the level of institutional action for not just government, but of course all institutions, private sector, um, civil society, communities. I think what we're not seeing is the level of concerted action to change the culture of, of, uh, of amongst all of us. So we have zero tolerance for all forms of gender-based violence.
So, what do you think should be happening? What is missing? You're saying not seeing the level of concern and concerted action from various players, including organizations in civil society such as yours. What are some of the things that should be happening that are not happening?
But I think, first of all, we have to start with accountability. The sense that we are all accountable to each other. So accountability at a very, personal level, that we are all accountable to each other, to our family members, to our neighbors, to our community, to speak up, to act up, to be clear in our messaging that domestic violence is criminal conduct. And when we know that family members are engaged or friends are engaged in domestic violence, that we speak up, we hold them to account. We know that we have family and friends who are victims, and we are there to support them to get them out of harm's way. So I think there's accountability that starts at a personal level. But of course, the state has a larger accountability because the state has the obligation to protect, respect, and fulfill human rights, and in particular, women's rights to safety, women's rights to voice and to choice. And so what we keep calling for is effective implementation of a number of services. We need quality access to the justice sector. We call for, within the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, zero tolerance for delay in the hearing and determination of protection orders. We call for very strong accountability within the police service to, with active due diligence, to investigate, to charge, and to prosecute criminal acts, which are domestic violence, these are criminal acts. We're calling upon the health sector to be kind of gender informed, how they deliver their services. But very, very importantly, and I think we have to spend a lot more time on this, we're calling for a response within the education sector. Now, the school sector, children go to school from 3 or 4 until they're 18, at least in early childhood education, primary school, secondary school. So they are, let's call them as tactic audience. And what children, and of course the schools and teachers are not the only influencers on children, of course not. Parents and families are very important. But they are in school for a number of hours for many years of their life. And we think that the school system has to be very reflective of the values that we seek to ensure that, we don't have a violent society. And those values include, one, respect for each other, equality, understanding that we need to treat people equally, to be kind, to be empathetic. So this question of empathy and equality is critical to be woven into the school system and the way in which we work in it is. And that means that teachers must model that. The children must be treated with kindness, with empathy. They must be taught skills for healthy communication and to equal relationships. We really think that now we're at the stage where the education sector has to be on the forefront of the response to domestic violence and gender-based violence in this country.
And how do we get to that? There needs to be sort of more advocacy towards the education system, and the Ministry of Education has to come on board in a better way, in a more effective way.
Yeah, I think advocacy for the demand for it, but also the supply, the listening. The education sector has to hear that and has to understand it and has to drive the policy development. The Coalition Against Domestic Violence a few years ago entered into a memorandum of understanding with Tutor to do just that, to work with the teachers, with their membership around the principles of empathy and equality in the classroom and in teaching practice. Of course, we've had COVID, so that has interrupted that initiative. But we do think that the education sector is on the forefront of this. And to say, maybe to step back a little bit, we also understand within the Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the NGO movement that there is or has been a draft national strategy to address all forms of gender-based violence. And that draft national strategy is supposed to be a whole of government strategy, a whole of society strategy. But we don't know where it's gone. We have been asking to have a sight of it so that, we can be consulted as organizations that work on the issue every day. We can be consulted on it, we can improve it, and that it should be implemented with resources. So I think it's maybe right now what the call is I think within that draft, within that strategy, the education sector would have to be a big part. Now, also to say, the sense of progress, we do have to have that. Even within the private sector, the Chamber of Commerce has adopted a model, a protocol. It's called a workplace policy to support persons affected by domestic violence. So we're also in the private sector coming on understanding that they too have a role in relation to their employees to support those who are in harm's way, but also to hold those accountable of their employees who are engaged in domestic violence. So the progress is slow, it's fast enough so that we think that we're achieving some critical mass of awareness and therefore demand for more effective, comprehensive response by the society and the country.
All right, so in the news a couple of moments ago before we started talking, there was an item there from Sandrine Rattan, who's head of another one of these organizations, the Integrated Women's Network. I think I'm missing a term inside of there. And she is saying that, the government needs to connect more with civil society on this issue.
Needs to connect more with civil society, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, of course, we agree with that. In many different ways. Okay, because I think this issue of domestic violence is an issue that has been given life by civil society actors, by women's organizations more specifically. As I said, the first shelters were started by women's organizations. And what the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, which is a membership organization of shelters, of children's groups and organizations working on this issue, what we've been saying is that these service providers, shelters, hotlines, these service providers must be adequately resourced. They must be given subventions that help them stay alive. We keep seeing shelters having to temporarily shut down or reduce capacity because they just don't have the resources that they need to meet the needs and the level of services that they want to provide. So that engagement with service providers, organizations like the Coalition, we do psychosocial support to persons especially affected by domestic violence. We are saying these organizations have to be supported to provide quality services. And we're also saying that the civil society, that includes state-based institutions, men's organizations, the sector, women's movement, gender equality advocates, all those organizations that have their ears close to the ground. They understand the dynamics of domestic violence. They understand the costs and the consequences. They understand how it is linked to gender inequality and other forms of inequality. And so we bring an analysis that we think can help shape a rather more effective state response to secure the end of gender-based violence through its reduction. So yes, I do agree with her entirely.
What would you say if you had to make an assessment on the performance and the effectiveness of the gender-based violence unit in the police service? Because a lot of times some of these initiatives are to forestall and to get in front of the issue before it plays out in front of us in the way that it does. Is that happening to the extent that was imagined?
Well, we certainly welcome the establishment of the specialized unit. We think that has been very important because what we have there in specialized units are people who are specifically trained to understand, again, as I said before, the dynamics, the causes and the consequences. And these specialized units are also supposed to ensure a more speedy response. But we've been really also calling for them to be better resourced. They were established, but we understand that necessarily the level of resourcing that you would need to have to match the prevalence of domestic violence in this country. So we think it's a good start. We think that they should be adequately resourced, and also that there should be a mechanism where these specialized units, whether the specialized units are within the police service or any other ministry, these specialized units should have mechanisms of consultation and dialogue with civil society organizations so that we can have the feedback loop. We can say what's working well, what needs to be improved. And we really think that a strong consultative mechanism is important for constant re-evaluation of the effectiveness of the services. But certainly, the specialized police units we think have been a really an important development, and we call it for their strengthening.
All right, and some time ago, again, in response to one incident or the other, you had raised the issue about the support for the shelter. In this case, that's the name of a particular facility that is sort of run by you all, but there are shelters outside of that. But you were saying that there is not enough support for shelters for women in distress in the country.
No, they're not. I mean, there's some formula concerning the number of shelter spaces that you need for the population. And by this formula, Trinidad and Tobago needs about 135 spaces, family spaces.
135?
Yeah. About 130, 135. Let's say, I don't mean shelters, but spaces, rooms,
Right, okay.
Given the prevalence of this issue in this country. So that's kind of a formula.
Yes.
But we don't have anything near that in this country, so which means that a lot of people can't access shelters. And even the shelters that exist, you know, Andy, every time you open a newspaper, you might feel, okay, I'm exaggerating, but very often shelters are trying to raise funds to continue their functioning, this fundraiser or that fundraiser, so they're constantly having to fundraise, meanwhile they're doing service tourism. And we're saying that the subvention to the shelters should be adequate. They shouldn't meet all of their staffing needs. And we definitely know at this time it is not that. I know that there is some consideration, I think, but I hope there is a thing to increase the subventions, but also to make sure that the shelters are all the shelters get subventions. I think that that's really important. And then there are organizations that provide psychosocial support. They're not shelters, but they're doing counseling. As the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, we do free counseling. We provide free counseling for persons especially affected by domestic violence, including children. So, organizations like us, they're continuously having to raise funds, and, private sector in Trinidad and Tobago and individuals have been quite supportive. But this is something that you need to have sustained, and you need predictable funding, and that's where the partnership with the government is so important to make sure that these services continue and at the quality that we need. So yes, a more active partnership, dialogue, also sharing of expertise. So the partnership is not just for money with the state. The partnership has to be about all of the aspects of the resources that are needed to have quality, accessible services across the country. For example, Tobago does not have a shelter yet. So one of the members of the coalition, Women of Substance in Tobago, has just finally received, I understand, the access to a space, physical space, land in a house to start a shelter. I want to just acknowledge Elisa Mars in Tobago and her membership of Women of Substance in this initiative. But, there are other parts of Trinidad that are not well served because they may be far away, they're rural, they're remote. They're not well served in relation to services for people especially affected by domestic violence, and all of that we have to resolve.
Yeah. Are there countries, are there societies in different parts of the world which could be models for how we treat this issue? So where are some of the countries that are doing better than us and that appear to have a formula that could be worked?
Andy, I want to say that this is a global problem because it's so linked to gender inequality, it's so linked to the traditions and the histories of an equal relationship between women and men. What we talk about power and control, notions of a certain kind of masculinity which demands and expects that women are to be submissive, women are considered inferior and are to be controlled. So that is a global phenomenon. So the countries where, of course, there's been more progress in eliminating inequality in the deep culture of their countries, you will see more progress in addressing domestic violence. And it is also a question of countries where there are more resources, they can get more comprehensive servicing to not only victims and survivors, but also to perpetrators. So I don't want to call out a country because I think all of us are sort of still struggling with how do we really improve the services And I think there's also something that we need to also think about here in Trinidad and Tobago, which is services for perpetrators. In the last reform of the Domestic Violence Act, we were able to work with then Attorney General Farid Al-Rawi to insert into the act the requirement for the courts to undertake risk assessment of persons who have been alleged to perpetrate domestic violence. And that those risk assessments will tell the court and the police whether or not there was a particular likelihood that this person would murder or seriously injure someone. And so coming back to the recent murder-suicide, Andy, we really are also calling for to make sure that these risk assessments, the protocol for the risk assessments are finalized, and we think that's going to be a big part of the legal response to prevent the perpetration of further harm.
Yeah, but well, unless we still don't know enough of the facts in that case, but it appeared that from most of the reporting on this man was an excellent person. He's described as a fabulous teacher. He produced a lot of good children in that class in Avocat, and he was doing well. He seemed to be very pleasant, and things were going good until his wife, he felt it necessary to tell his wife what he'd done, and she decided, well, that, I'm not going to take that. And interesting in the reporting, his relatives are saying that he was begging her not to do what she wanted to do, and her relatives were saying that there were instances of violent disagreement between them, and put into that the sort of encouragement we have that if we see something, to say something, but that is not working.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to comment on that case because we hear in various reports, but what is incontrovertible is that she was killed.
Yes.
By her, who then killed himself. And what we do know from global studies, and even here, the vast majority, if not all, of murder-suicides are committed by men.
Yes.
So, not commenting specifically on that case, we know it has to do, there's something about that has to do with a certain kind of masculinity and understanding of your place in the world. And what the studies also show that these incidents of murder-suicide in the context of marital breakdown happen mostly when women have signaled their intention to leave. In other words, when they exercise their personal agency, their integrity, their own decision-making to say, you can't control me, I can end my situation and I can leave. And that is the time of heightened risk. So we also know that people can be very kind and wonderful outside of their home, but the target of their violence and their anger is in the home, and it's often the woman in the home. Again, comes back to the question of gender inequality, cultures of gender inequality. So I think whether or not people pleasant and well-behaved outside the home, I don't think it's a material issue to the question of domestic violence, having regard to what we know about the causes of domestic violence.
Yeah.
This whole notion of power and control.
Yeah, but the question is that speaks to the issue about the urgings that we continue to get about if you see something, say something. But a lot of times there's nothing to see.
Someone said something recently, a psychotherapist from Grenada, a woman called Dr. Hazel W. And she works her specialty working on children under 5. So, baby abuse really, it's just dreadful. But she said something at a seminar recently, and it really struck me. She says there's never a case where no one knows. Somebody always knows.
Okay.
Very unlikely, no one knows. But they may not know how to respond.
Yeah.
Or just they try and work it out. Or they may use the language of equivalence. Well, there was quarreling in the marriage, or there was discord in the marriage or in the union. Well, that's very neutral language. And yes, all of us who are in unions know that there's discord in unions, but that's different. Discord is different from one person putting violence against another person. So the thing is to know what to do. If you know someone who's in harm's way, I think it is very careful to acknowledge that you know. Tell them in a way that they understand that you know, and that means that you're also there to support them in their leave-taking or in their passage to safety. Don't pretend. They may want to pretend that you don't know, but you must not pretend that you don't know.
Yeah.
But you do that in a way that is judgmental. And if you know someone who's perpetrating violence or you've heard it, you have to confront the person. You have to say, what are you doing? This is a crime. You know, that we as bystanders have to end silence. We can't pretend not to know what we don't know. And if we have a reasonable suspicion, that's enough to have a conversation, you know, as gently as we need to have it. But we can't stay silent anymore.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much. Let me apologize to you for agreeing to interrupt your exercise routine this morning. But thank you very much, Robert de Klerk, President of the...
And thank you always for sort of giving us the platform to speak to these issues. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Robert de Klerk, President of the Coalition Against Domestic Violence in Trinidad and Tobago. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we tell you what the numbers are and those things before we move forward. We take a look around the region before we continue. Stay with us.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Change your fate. Start to win at life with $20,000 every month. Win $20,000 every month for 20 years with NLCB's newest game, Win for Life. 6 numbers from 28 plus the cash ball could make you win for life. You deserve a win. Play Win for Life today. Visit NLCBGames.com for details. Players must be 18 years and over. Please play responsibly.
We dare you to dream, to see beyond the struggle, to envision the possibilities, to live life with unlimited vision. Ferrera Optical supports you with complete eyewear starting at only $795. Let's make those dreams a reality. So book your visit via 227-7000, WhatsApp message 278-2878, or at FerreraOptical.com today. We dare you to keep going. Ferrera Optical says, don't limit your vision.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
All right, so let's get to the numbers now with COVID-19 on this day. Well, the figures would represent what was the situation up to the end of yesterday with the positive cases, the total active cases, the deaths, and so on. So those are the numbers: 128,889, the totally recovered patients. Total active positive cases, 6,459. 3,766, that's the number of persons who've died as a result of having come into contact with COVID-19. 139,114, the total positive cases reported in the country since we began the counting on March 12, 2020. And 321, the new positive cases reported in 24-hour period up to the end of yesterday. 164, that's the number of persons in the parallel health care system as we speak this morning. Let's tell you now what the question is and the response is. The Newsday poll this morning: do you believe Tobago's carnival scheduled for October 28th to 30th will be successful? Why or why not? Well, here's one response. The relevant part of the population have bills to pay and very important things on their minds. Who's studying a carnival in these dire economic times where price of basic survival commodities are going up almost daily? One other response: yes, Trini love to party. Another: yes, it will be a great success. There's enough time for planning. Huge potential to increase tourism. That's from another response. But please, for the love of all things sensible, don't destroy the natural habitat of the island. You know, just Trinbagonians will throw a fit on the coral reef or something dotish of the sort. Another response says, I believe they did a lot of consulting to come to a decision to host a carnival, so it should come off smoothly. Carnival in October, that's what they're planning for Tobago, and that is a big news in Tobago. Let's just tell you, as we audit what's in the papers in Trinidad and Tobago, the Newsday. So the front page of the Newsday, the story is that the THA is reconsidering a proposal to appoint political analyst Dr. Winford James to an appointment on a board to run the Studley Park. And there's also, they're talking about saving money, 2.8 million, the infrastructure secretary saying that. Tobago Mass on October 26th to 28th or 28th to 30th. So those are the stories on the front page of the Newsday Tobago. And here's a look at the back page. And the Newsday Trinidad and Tobago stories from a meeting last evening of the People's National Movement with the Prime Minister is debunking the allegation by the leader of the opposition that the government is spying on people. There is spyware in the country, where the Prime Minister is saying that is to deal with criminals. And Minister Mr. Cummings, he's again saying that, in another response to an allegation made by the leader of the opposition, that there's nothing wrong with his vehicle being seen on some farmland in Carney. He says that his family rightly runs the business. He used to be there, but he's delinked from it. Well, that's the big story on the front page of the Newsday Trinidad and Tobago today. And there's the back page of Courts Sports is there. So we can take a look around the region now. We go to Barbados, where they're talking about the situation regarding child molestation, child abuse in that country. They say the figures are high enough to be worrying. Take a look at how the story is being reported by Barbados today.
At least one case of child abuse is reported daily in Barbados and one case of sexual abuse per week. At the launch of the island's first Child Abuse Awareness Month this morning, People's Empowerment and Elder Affairs Minister Kurt Humphrey says one case is one too many, and he wants society to do more to crack down on the scourge.
Every number is a case, and that some cases are more than one person. So if I say there were 529 cases, the likelihood is that there are more than 529 persons involved in that case. So there were 529 cases of abuse in 2019, of which 22.8% would have been physical and 21.5% would have been sexual. In 2021, there were 489 cases, of which 23% were physical and 22% would have been sexual. So far, the numbers seem to suggest that in January, there were 41 cases. 12 were physical, 10 sexual, and 18 cases of neglect. I think this neglect trend is something we really have to be mindful of, because neglect will invariably lead to these other things. In February, there were 42 cases, 12 physical, 6 sexual, and 23 cases of neglect. And this doesn't speak well to Barbados. And some people may argue that it is a good thing that the numbers are not increasing, but the fact is that the numbers aren't decreasing either. I think we have to be very mindful of these numbers. They are, in my mind, they are still staggering. I know Child Care Board is doing a lot of work, and it's easy. The government is a very easy target. It is easy to blame the government for everything that is happening in Barbadian society. But the reality is that people live in families, they live in communities, they live in wider societies, and all of us have a responsibility, and all of us have a role to play in reducing these numbers.
Meanwhile, mandatory reporting of child abuse is on the cards for Barbados. Minister Humphrey revealed that government is working closely with UNICEF to ensure all cases can be reported and investigated.
I think we have to be very mindful of these numbers. They are, in my mind, they are still staggering. I know Child Care Board is doing a lot of work, and it's easy. The government is a very easy target. It is easy to blame the government for everything that is happening in Barbadian society. But the reality is that people live in families, they live in communities, they live in wider societies, and all of us have a responsibility, and all of us have a role to play in reducing these numbers.
All right, so we come back to this territory now so we're talking, once again, we had this discussion with this lady on Monday, Rebecca Ali Govaya. She's a founder and executive director of the organization called the Elpis Center. They were talking about the dangers of too early sexual activity among young people and why they should wait. And she was saying at the end of that some of that is useful in terms of understanding why we have so much domestic violence in light of the murder and suicide which took place a couple of days ago, which we were talking about in the first segment with Roberta Clark. And so she's agreed to come back and explain to us how, with the right kind of upbringing, right kind of education, and the right kind of abstinences, probably we will see less of these kinds of incidents. And she's going to be joined by one of her colleagues and associates on this matter. But so good to see you again. Thank you very much for agreeing to come on, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me on again. So just to remind the viewers, what we spoke about on Monday was risk avoidance education.
Yes.
And just by way of definition, it's an education that teaches the teens and preteens that participate how to avoid risky behaviors. But risky behaviors tend to cluster together, right? This is what the research shows. So illicit drug use, illicit drinking, risky sexual behavior, these cluster together. So when we teach our SRA program, some of the benefits that the participants enjoy from that is also learning about self-regulation, about success sequencing for poverty prevention, about healthy relationships. What does a healthy relationship look like? What are the components of that? And also what unhealthy looks like. They learn goal setting, they learn how to resist sexual coercion, avoiding dating violence, resisting other risk behaviors such as underage drinking and illicit drug use. So the concept behind a risk avoidance education is to do no harm to yourself, to others, or your future. So what we aim to do is to set teens up for overall success in life, not just poverty reduction, but in terms of healthy relationship and family formation.
Right.
One of the...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that adverse childhood experiences is known to be one of those life experiences that set our children up for abusive relationships later in life. And so we have to, what an adverse childhood experience is essentially a traumatic experience that a child goes through between 0 to 17 years old. And it could be witnessing violence, it could be a trauma they've experienced, or it could just be an unhealthy, unstable family environment where there's poor attachment to parents, where there is unhealthy family relationship. So the idea as well behind promoting risk avoidance education is to help reduce the incidence of these adverse childhood experiences. And Andy, maybe some viewers have not thought about this, but teen dating violence is a form of adverse childhood experience that sets our young people up for long-term mental, physical, psychological, emotional harm that then flows over into adult relationships. And as a matter of fact, teen dating violence in itself is pretty high. The CDC statistics say about 1 in 12 young people that are in a dating relationship has experienced some form of violence in that relationship, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual.
1 in 12?
1 in 12.
So that's almost like 10%, almost 10 every 100. So, yeah.
Exactly. So it's high. And then you combine that with other adverse childhood experiences. And, ACE is something that we need to be hugely concerned about because the figures are significant. About 61% of adults surveyed in the US said they had at least one adverse childhood experience. And about more than half of that have had 4 adverse childhood experiences or more.
All right.
So this is a public health issue.
Yes.
Yes, domestic violence is a public health issue. And teaching our children risk avoidance is part of the arsenal, as it were, to reduce the incidence of domestic violence.
Right. I want to come to how you make the link with the possible links between that you're talking about and the experiences that we've been seeing, particularly this last one with this murder suicide. You said probably if one of them had some. But before we do that,
there's been so much. So many stories in social media about that incident, but let me just tell you from the point of view of Alpercent and the work that we have done to help mothers and their children transition out of abusive situations. And some of the patterns, I believe, would be the same in that situation. So you find things like adverse traumatic childhood experiences on both the part of the perpetrator and the victim. Okay, we have seen economic strain in the home, and these are common factors. We've seen mental health issues, personality disorders. In other words, there is a cocktail, as it were, of reasons that go into why domestic violence occurs. There's not one thread or strand that we can just pull out and say, oh, this is why, and let's just get a magic bullet to fix it. So I suspect that tragic incident that occurred over the weekend, had or was as a result of a cocktail of events and traumas over a long time, not just when those two individuals became adults and entered into that marriage 12 or 14 years ago. I believe it extended way earlier than that into childhood.
That's
some of what I've read.
That's the insights you have from the work you do, because in a lot of cases the reporting is not saying that. It said something happened at the point at which he told her what he had done outside of the marriage, and she was not going to accept that, and he tried to plead with her, and so on and so on. But let's bring in your colleague here, Mr. Michael Clark. Good morning, sir. Good to see you. Take it up from there.
Good morning and welcome.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you were nodding at some of the points Rebecca was making. So explain why.
I'm sorry?
I said you were nodding at some of the points that Rebecca was making just before we...
Well, yes, one of the points that she made that is so true. So the organization that I founded, the Ananias Foundation, really works with the perpetrators, people who are causing harm in the relationship. And what Rebecca said was absolutely true, that it's a cocktail of factors that cause people to be abusive and cause harm in a relationship. And that cocktail starts getting formed oftentimes early in life. And it's those life experiences that set an individual up on a path for lacking emotional control. So when things happen in their life, in their relationships, like a partner who wants to leave or conflict within a relationship, they're not able to handle that in a healthy, productive way. All of those things can be difficult situations, but they don't have to result in violence. They don't have to result in abuse. And they don't normally, but when that individual hasn't got that good foundation to develop good emotional control, in fact, that oftentimes, sadly, is what happens.
Yeah, but in this case, there were no signs of that, unless we don't know their details, or we don't hear. What struck me was that in one of the pieces of reporting, the man's relatives said to the reporter that he had been begging her to reconcile because he did not want to be separated from his children, and that she refused to do that. She was intent on leaving the marriage because of what he disclosed to her about his infidelity.
Yeah, and that absolutely makes sense. Partner abuse is not because we hate the person. Oftentimes there's this tremendous love, and this sense of loss feels like a threat. And it's how we respond to that threat. If we don't have our emotional house in order, that threat of loss can feel overwhelming. And then people lash out, they act out in ways that are terribly damaging, terribly hurtful. So that part of the story is consistent with the pattern that we see. Fortunately, not all of those incidences result in the death of the partner, as was this case that I know happened in your country. But abusive behavior is oftentimes that individual trying to protect themselves from some loss that they really don't want to experience.
Yeah, and Rebecca, this goes to the other point about the constant sort of urging that we have about if you see something or if you hear something, say something, because now her relatives are saying that in spite of the fact that he from the reporting on it, he's had this wonderful image as a good teacher, somebody who's inspirational in school. There's a picture in the paper of him with the former chairman of the Children's Authority and all of that. But her relatives are now saying that she was a victim of emotional and mental abuse and had decided to leave the relationship. Yeah.
Exactly, and more likely than not, Andy, these emotional harm experiences extended outside of that marriage. I read one article where they very briefly mentioned the dad of the perpetrator.
Yeah, he died of COVID.
And that he was a very
lost it.
domineering individual. And as a matter of fact, the perpetrator would not have disclosed his infidelity or the fact that this child existed until the dad died in May last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, many people have not explored that angle, but that is significant in my mind as to how this very tragic situation occurred. But we have got to keep pressing forward to find solutions. We have got to collaborate. We have got to, Michael's foundation, the Ananias Foundation, they have free resources for anyone who's even listening on now and they're saying, look, I'm causing harm to someone I love and I need to stop this behavior. Where can I get help? You can go to his website immediately, and there's free resources available, as well as groups that you could join from anywhere in the world. And as for us at Outpost Center, we have our teen programs available. And, as I said, Andy, we have so many testimonials from teenagers who've said, thank you for helping me understand how to avoid risky behaviors, giving me the tools, the refusal skills, the boundary setting. What is a healthy versus unhealthy relationship? Would you believe, Andy, that some of the older teens that we have covered that material with have said, oh my gosh, Miss, we had no idea that these are the components of an unhealthy relationship. I think my parents are in one right now, and I'm going home to talk to them to share this information, right? So because harm or abuse starts off very subtly, right?
Yes.
And Michael can tell you about this. It doesn't. You don't go from 0 to 100.
All right, so
in 2 seconds.
All right, so Mr. Clark,
it starts off very subtly.
Yeah, Mr. Clark, let me ask you, you're speaking to us from where? And you have 1 minute in order to make that point before we wrap up, to take us up from where Rebecca pointed.
That's true, and oftentimes when an individual or a couple notices that they're having unhealthy behavior, that's something that needs to be acted on. It needs to be, find a solution for that and get help, because to allow that to continue to go on and fester, it only gets worse, and then can sometimes end tragically, like the situation I know that happened over the weekend. So this is why, recognizing these early warning signs that a relationship is not healthy, but also knowing that there is help, that change is possible, that it doesn't have to be that way, I think is empowering for people and for couples who find themselves in that situation.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to have to leave it there. Rebecca, Ali, goodbye.
Thank you for having us.
And Mr.
Thank you.
Michael Clark, thank you very much. Well, there's news up ahead, just up ahead. Following that, we get into a discussion with Mr. Alwyn Beddoe about whether or not we have real local government in Trinidad and Tobago, whether the latest attempt will make any significant difference. Stay with us.
Seven is out. All day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing. We are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Welcome back to the program. They say in Britain, the British jurisprudence, they say that the laws have to be made to be understandable by people on what they call the Clapham Omnibus. In Trinidad and Tobago, we used to have cinemas, and they were graded by who's in balcony, who's in house, and who's in pit. And the people, pit represented where the ordinary folk were. And there are other ways to describe the ordinary man. This guest says that he likes to define himself as somebody who has a view from the rum shop. That's where a lot of philosophy is discussed as part of our culture. And that is the kind of perspective he brings to issues. He's somebody who's an advocate for local government, effective local government in Trinidad and Tobago. When we talk about local government reform, he says, well, there's nothing to reform because there's no real local government in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's the perspective he's agreed to share with us on this program this morning about the latest attempts at addressing purported local government. There's been a lot of commentary on the latest bill, and there's excitement about the fact that the former Attorney General is going to go into that ministry, or has gone into that ministry about local government. He says he's excited to get there. But what we have before us in an editorial in the Express, they were saying that it doesn't go far enough, and the bill is not radical enough at all in addressing what ought to be the needs for local government in Trinidad and Tobago. Alwyn Beddoes says there's none of that. Good morning, my friend. Good to hear from you. I was going to say good to see you, but you're on the phone, but we will see something coming up on the screen. Good morning. Good to have you.
Good morning, Andy. Good morning, Andy.
Good to have you.
And thanks for having me and wanted to hear my views, although some of them you know them already.
Yes, well, it's for those people who should be familiar with some of the things you say, and so you're an advocate for real, effective local government in Trinidad and Tobago. This bill will not get us there. That, you know, it's some distance behind where you think we should be. So the Express editorial that I'm referring to, it said that it is not going to address what needs to be the case with local government in Trinidad and Tobago. Take it from there.
Yeah, well, like I say, we don't really have local government. And if a good starting point for discussion in the present circumstances is really what is Mr. Alwari, what is he going to tackle? And I use the word tackle because, see, as far as most people believe, he has no background in local government, no knowledge in local government, no experience in local government. And yet, from the word go, 2 days afterwards, after he settled in sort of, you were hearing that what he's doing, he's hitting the ground running. And he's hitting the ground running to do what? I want to ask the questions. Exactly what is he doing? What is he trying to whatever it is, what's he going to use? Is he going to form in local government? Is he trying to inform, conform, uniform all the local government? Or perhaps as some friend of mine naughtily put it, is he going to deform what we already have? So one asks the question, what is it? So we need to look at that and see what we have. That's a practical situation. We need not get too philosophical, although it's useful always to go back to first premises, for his philosophies, for his postulations and so on. You will go there. But needs something to go on, and I have no doubt what he will be doing is running towards the act which governs local government in Trinidad and try to tinker with it. Now remember, the first time that some form of local government came in was in 1840-something in Trinidad, when Lord Harris was instructed by the colonial office to start to put in something resembling local government, something like local government. And that is where we had for the non-municipal areas, you had the county councils and the wardens and so on, which went on right on until let's say the present era in the 46, about 46 or thereabouts. So one has asked, what exactly is he doing? And let us see clearly what we do, so what he has in mind, so we can make a useful comment about it. I could give you one or two practical examples to show you. When you get the answer, what is the status of local government here?
Yeah.
I'll do it in a while if you want me to.
Go ahead.
Go ahead?
Yeah.
All right. When I ask the questions, you see a lot of talk about local government there. And I ask a simple question. Ask all those talking about it and all the commentators, because I figure they don't have a fully grasp of local government. What essentially is the difference between all these corporations, municipal corporations that we have here, and the Chaguaramas Development Authority? And you may add also the RHAs. What is the essential difference? And I will tell you the essential difference is that corporations have an elected body, the councillors and the council that is elected as opposed to those others. And therefore, technically or theoretically, they have their allegiance from the people who elected them. In practice, it mightn't be so. In practice, it might be from the party and the political leader of the party in power, which might be there. And the next difference that you hear all the time, because I think even Mr. Edwari had made this point of modeling on Tobago, and all the time, all the corporations, all the councillors, you hear them talking about, why they don't give us the money? Why they don't make us like Tobago, the model? And you ask, what is the essential difference between Tobago and all these other corporations, some of them that are bigger than Tobago? And the essential difference is that in Tobago, you have legally a determination of amount of money they get, or it can be determined, so they know they are getting that, they're sure that it's guaranteed. And also, they have a guaranteed list of duties, functions that they have to perform. Whether or not it could be queried, or there's argument about it, because in Trinidad, as Ellis Clark said, we all crabs in a barrel. But that is the essential difference. And that makes all the thing, because in all these local government, they have these bodies, these corporations, they have no money they can depend on. Everything is dependent on what is handed out to them after they make requests, and their role is really advocacy. And we have a minister of local government who handles that. But he's not local government, he's central government. So I'll probably leave it like that for the time being as a bit of food for thought for you, Andy.
Mm-hmm. And the question is that local government people are seen as, certainly in our context, sort of feeder valves to the people in central government. So they are the ground troops, as it were, and they can't be seen to be taking any position that is antagonistic to the party they belong to, which is in the central government, which is in the parliament. And that's an occupational, you could call it a hazard, or that's just how it works. And so there's no independence among local government people because they were elected to what used to be the county councils and now to these local government organizations. And that's an occupational issue, a problematic or problematique, as the people might say.
Well, you see, a lot of it comes from not getting clear or not having it clear what is the role, or the true role and function of local government. And it has come to be, in my view, that they have been regarded from ever since in Trinidad, when we started to have the current setup of local government, to be institutions as an extension of party, or for the purpose of promoting a party, of carrying on party. And if I ask these questions, if these all the councils, and if they were to show any sign of independence or in them, where have you seen any corporation, for instance, speaking out on anything, putting up any submissions on anything, be it on constitution, be it on sports, be it on elections, on anything, even things affecting them? You don't see that at all. You hear something that they might say something through a party, but it doesn't happen. And we don't have that kind of independence that we should get from this government as an institution, as people in the area, and making a contribution to the place. You see, and if you ask anybody what is local government, what they do, and I challenge you to do that, and what you will hear is some sort of thing, well, where they see about the garbage and they see about the roads and whatnot, but they can't do anything except the Minister of Local Government agrees. And therefore, I think the problem there is no sort of autonomy. In the United States, there's almost 100,000 bodies that are regarded as local government bodies. And the criteria for that by the Census Authority, bodies that have a sufficient degree or level of administration and fiscal autonomy. That's what classifies them. Simple.
And that is absent in our and that is absent in our context.
We don't have any. You go anywhere. You virtually they can't even put up box trains with it going through the central government, the minister. find within the local government body, there's a contest. There's a contest with them to catch the eyes of the government so that they could get allocation. And in Trinidad, I always remember my friend Princess Amaru was talking about from colonialism, that the British policy was to divide and rule. What we have now is cherry pick and rule. So there's always a scope for cherry picking at all levels. So there's a sort of contestation between the authorities.
So you're not excited by anything that Mr. Al-Rawi will propose in sort of prosecuting this assignment that he now has? Nothing will make a significant difference enough to say that we're on the road to effective and legitimate local government.
No, we can't, because he doesn't know. And in fact, I'm glad to see that you took the initiative to start off the ball rolling to discuss this outside of the arena of Mr. Edwari, because this is what happens. Local government is a very, very important thing for us at this stage, you know. And within recent times, from all sources, you hear talking about the people, and the people having a say, and having an effective say, and institutions and so on. And the best institutions, the institution for that is local government. If we try to develop local government, we would find that we'll do that in terms of developing people. In an aspect of local government here, if you ask around, you hear about fixing the roads. Well, they can't do that because that is taken away from them. You find picking up the garbage and this sort. But there's no question of the development aspect of local government. And this what is very important in terms of local government. There's of course, the political education, but that read party allegiance. But there's also the question of social development, economic development, political development, and so on, and the education aspect, which is intrinsic in the very operations of local government. And unless we can get that, and I have no, in that case, the good thing that you talk about it, because I hope that somewhere down the line we'll start the ball rolling and people talk about what really should be in terms of local government, or what could be within the provinces, because local government, as we have it in Trinidad, is a creature of statute.
Right.
And without any constitutional provision, you find that the government can change anything in local government every Monday morning.
Yeah, all right. So this particular initiative here, with this iteration of the bill, is that it will give the local government bodies access to the funds that will be collected through the property tax and so on, and that is a start. What's your comment on that? So they will be able to retain the monies collected for people's properties wherever they are.
Well, this sounds nice, and this is what local government practitioners, although in my view everybody is a local government practitioner because everybody is affected by local government. But that apart, the so-called practitioners, that is what they see as the important thing, because as Parra said, no money, no love. You can't say you have any kind of government if you don't have money, you don't have access to money, or you can't raise the money, and they can't. So you wait until you get a subvention from government, and what happens is you put up your estimates, and this is, as I mentioned, sorry to go off a bit. That is one area. If we try to bring local government to some meaning, that is one area where local governments can bring their budgets to the people, have their meetings beforehand, and discuss what is their budget. What you hear about it is when it goes to Parliament, and you hear them talking about it, and that's the end of it. Once you get the allocation, as I think James and so on had talked about very often in Tobago, once you get the allocation, that is it, and then you could then shift it around as you want. So in fact, this is really a key thing. But what happens in practice? pious but innocuous statements that they were right. But what happens in practice afterwards?
Yeah, and there was a period when Hazel Manning was Minister of Local Government, and they had this initiative that I'd been privileged to sort of coordinate some of that and anchor some of the discussions they had in different parts of the country. I'm talking about spatial development and spatial development plans in a number of corporations in Samoa, Laventille, in Piako, Tunapuna, in Rio Claro. And again, those appeared to be ambitious, but nothing has happened since then.
No, well, let me, and again, too, we just shifted around because you the first person to bring up, to talk about local government. So it's really food for thought. That is an interesting point. What they have, these pious say, what they hold before you, what passes for local government, as Lord Harris has said since 1845. What we have here in Trinidad, local government didn't start with Eric Williams, you know, or just as how you might be led to believe that water problems and water distribution started with Wasser. No, and it's been long before. What we had was another system. We had municipalities, because ever since you had, well, not ever since, but you had San Fernando, then you had Port of Spain, and in 1880, the Royal Borough for Rico. So we had a sort of municipal local government. What was the concern was really in the rural areas, outside of the municipalities, and the system, as you call it, of local government, has really been focused into the wider rural area. What we are having now, that's what I'm saying, we need to examine some of these things, and we'll probably, say why we say we can't help that, but we could probably make the best of it if you would engage us properly in proper discourse. Amata Sen had said in one of his books recently that everything, look at the problems in India. One of the challenges is what he called as asymmetric information. And then when you get it, is a power relations in terms of talking. But there's a radio commentator and the public also, you have that different. And he said what is really needed is you must have informed public discourse at various levels, not just at the very top level in Parliament and heavies in the country. But that is a problem that we face in dealing with the thing. But look what is happening now.
Yes.
To come back again to municipality. What is being dangled before the eyes of people in local government, and they jumping at it. Oh, we're going to make Diego Martin
a borough,
the next borough, and Superior. And I suppose afterwards we hear about Rio Claro or Princess Town or Tunapuna.
So your point, it will make no difference. It will make no difference to our governance system.
And everybody jumping in. And have you seen where local government practitioners have actually asked what is meant by that? It's a municipal borough. And what is Diego Martin? Is it going to be the whole county or the ward of Diego Martin? Or is it because a recognizable and handleable, let me put it that way?
There's a region of Diego Martin.
Superior. What is it?
There's a region of Diego Martin. There's a Diego Martin Regional Corporation. But the other point that I want to get us to a little bit before we have to go is that the Express editorial says that this is an opportunity for us as citizens, I was going to say to rise up, but to become more vocal and more active in demanding a proper system be put in place to address this question of local government. What's your view on that?
Well, as I say, we have something going. Okay, can't say discard it. Yes, but we can make something out of it. One thing is really to involve the citizens in it. Some time ago, I done a paper. I mean, years ago, in fact, I think I sent it to Mr. Hussein when he was in San Francisco as mayor. One thing where you could involve people is, you see, the chairman or the mayor.
Yes.
Make that a popular seat by popular election. So it will not be just a party giving perks to somebody and making somebody a prominence. And so if you have that would start the education and development in local government. Another thing is, as I see, the budget. Bring it up to the people and discuss it with them. Whether or not they discard it afterwards, but at least make them see when they have it. I mean, we want this road and we want that fixed, but we come to talk about are you putting on education facilities, developmental facilities, social facilities. And the other thing is, where is community development in relation to local government? That should be part and parcel of local government.
Yeah.
In fact, when Lord Emery put up his proposals for local government in the 50s or so, very much involved in it was community development. In fact, after that started, you found a lot of the village councils coming on and so on, and that village council movement became a thing in itself. And these are just some simple things that are also in the allocation of resources.
Right.
It can't be just by VAPs. Develop some sort of system that we can understand, whether prorated according to population, according to the size of the community, and so on. And that could make some sense to people, and so on.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, my friend. We'll continue to talk about it.
But thank you very, very much, Andy. I'm glad that you were kind enough to want to get the Ramshop views.
Let all views contend. I take that from the late great Arthur N.R. Robinson. We must let all views contend. Thank you very much.
Okay, we can now turn to reparations. All right, thank you very much, Andy.
Okay. Well, just before we go, we wanted to show you this. Well-known celebrity bodyguard Johnny Bravo mimicking the movements, playing the steel band to the sound of something from the late Blacks. Today is the day that he leaves us on this face of the earth. Johnny Bravo, a tribute to Blacks. Short farewell, my friend. Well, that's our broadcast for this morning. We want to thank you for watching. We want to thank all our guests. And we tell you, as usual, you can get in touch with us at AM Prime on all our social media platforms. And you could send your emails to amprime@wesncc. We have news at the top of the hour at 8 o'clock, followed by today's edition of Talking Point with gentlemen Shah and Small. But for now, I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.